It is the dream of many occult practitioners to have a spiritual companion in their keep who can aid them in their craft. But spiritual companions such as jinns, kodams, muwakils, exceptionally pious spiritual being, are extremely difficult to obtain. If one was to line up 5,000 real spiritual practitioners, maybe one would have an actual spiritual being in their keep. Unfortunately, many practitioners lie about having a spiritual companion. They claim to have something they don't. When one gets a spiritual being in their keep, their abilities and power will immediately and immensely increase, allowing them to do things far beyond what humans can do, far beyond what we can comprehend. Practitioners who are backed by a spiritual being are favored among ones who seek them for assistance, and often feared by the practitioners who do not have this extra level of spiritual power that comes when one gets an entity in their keep. The difficulty in obtaining a spiritual being can be due to various reasons, but the main is not being able to see them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed the jinn to see us, but has not allowed mankind to see them. But a very few can, and those who have the blessing of an open third eye, ability to see entities, are often the practitioner who have spiritual companions. This is why it is so rare for one to have a jinn or similar entity in their keep. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blocked majority of mankind's eye from seeing the jinns and entities alike, making it extremely difficult to obtain one. How can you work with something you cannot see? Some occult practitioner whose work bring fruitful results may claim to have a jinn in their keep, yet still may not. What they may have is a connection with an entity through a secretive reading which may have been handed down to them. In such a case, the practitioner will read certain things that were handed down to him, or something she may have learned through a teacher. These readings will have connection with spiritual beings, where when the words phrases are read, the spiritual beings will assist the practitioner in her work, but the practitioner will not be able to see them, talk to them, give them specific tasks, or retrieve any type of information from them. Another similar scenario is when a practitioner is assigned a spiritual companion by her teacher during the practitioner's training. In such a case, the spiritual being will simply help the practitioner in her spiritual work whenever she starts to their spiritual work, or when they call upon the entity through various methods they have been taught when seeking their assistance. But similar to the first scenario, the practitioner will not be able to see the spiritual being, hear them, or have any direct communication with them, since all they have is a link to an entity. In my opinion, the majority of the practitioners claim to have an entity in their keep and whose spiritual work shows decent results. In actuality, have a link to a jinn, which is a far cry from having a full one-on-one connection with a jinn-mind spiritual being. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. When that special individual finds an interest in the occult, has the needed gifts to excel in this field, has the proper teacher, and after his training develops a full one-on-one connection with a spiritual being, and can see them, hear them, talk to them, and give them direct command. What through his power from the spiritual being in his keep can he do? The short answer is a lot of unimaginable things, but I feel the readers would like more details on these unimaginable things, so I will explain in a more detailed manner, insha'Allah. There was a man who lived in Jordan, who we will call Abu Abdul. Abu Abdul was taught by a teacher from Sudan. Abu Abdul was an absolute master of the dark arts, and what he could do through his jinns I have yet to see. Before moving forward with speaking about the abilities of Abu Abdul, I feel I should explain to the reader that not everyone who actually has a jinn can perform such tasks. What Abu Abdul was taught was a very specific magical art, which in my opinion he greatly excelled in it. But this absolutely does not mean if someone learned the same occult knowledge by the same teacher as Abu Abdul learned from, they too could accomplish the same feats as Abu Abdul. Absolutely not. Just like many things in life that require training, two individuals can be taught identically by the same teacher, but one of the trainees may just be better at the end. This simply because of some natural talent. When one excels so greatly in some of these occult knowledges and worries not about wrong or right, they at times may be able to command jinn in doing great and unimaginable tasks. Two individuals visited Abu Abdul one day, but I seem forget what the reason was. If my memory services me correct, it was to remove some black magic. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. As the two individuals spoke to Abu Abdul, he mentioned a very specific pair of shoes in one of the individual's closet back at their home, which I think was UAE. Within a blink of eye, he made the shoe appear in front of his visitors. Shocked they were as their screams filled Abu Abdul's home. Before I move forward, I would like to state that I'm not making these stories up. These are actual events. I would also like to state that I may be incorrect in some of the finer details, such as if the visitors were men or women, the exact reason visitors went to see Abu Abdul, the exact words that were spoken by Abu Abdul, and the individuals at home, any one of their personal feelings, etc. There was another incident where two men had gone to Abu Abdul's home. One of the men, for some reason, either did not like Abu Abdul, doubted him, or had a bad feeling about him. Abu Abdul took a notice to this and called the individual out and said something along of the line about how Abu Abdul took notice this man's attitude towards him. He then proceeded to tell this man, I feel this was done by Abu Abdul to show he was not a fake practitioner, when you leave my home, you will see an accident. It will involve a foreign woman, non-Middle Eastern, who was killed. She is also on her monthly cycle, and due to her status, the army will be at the accident scene. Upon hearing this, the individual doubted what he was told, and him and his friend went on their way home. As they came to the main road, a large amount of traffic was present. An accident had occurred, and many military vehicles were on the site. As they came closer to the scene of accident, a foreign, European I think, woman was observed lying dead on the floor, with blood leaking between her legs. Did his jinn predict the future? No, the accident had occurred, and they reported it to Abu Abdul, I assume due to the location of the accident. It took time for the military vehicles to get to the scene, and perhaps, therefore, the visitors at Abu Abdul's home were able to witness exactly what they were told. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Abu Abdul was illiterate, but when he called upon his jinn companions, they would take his hand and write, which he never learned how to do. At one time, a visitor asked him to do an istikhara, dream guidance. Abu Abdul either went and got a piece of paper or pointed at a piece of paper laying around. As the visitor stared at the paper, words appeared on it as they were being typed by an invisible typewriter. The once blank piece of paper was now full of Arabic words without anyone touching it or even going near it. Abu Abdul was said to be a master of the arts, especially the black arts. He could remove any black magic, and if he casted it on you, destructions were imminent. Astaghfirullah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. With such powers, one would assume the holder of it would live a life of ease and luxury. If not that, a life of comfort was to be expected, yet Abu Abdul was a drunkard. Abu Abdul had no lack of money, but the money he had was spent to support his drinking habit. His home, which was one bedroom that consisted of unfinished floors and unfinished walls, barely big enough to allow the living of a single person, yet his wife and young son lived with him. With the power this man possessed, to lack the basic necessity of life, such as warm running water, is certainly a shame. Abu Abdul didn't pray, regardless of living a walking distance from a burial ground of a holy person, which was near a mosque. He was a man with a great sense of humor. He would try to make you laugh and often joked, but how he felt deep inside one couldn't say. Abu Abdul did not deal with shaitan jinn, evil spirit. Therefore, one cannot say the jinn forced him to live the way he did or forced him to drink and not do salah. It is said by some that when you deal with the jinns, you lose barakah, blessings, in your life. Other things also have an impact on your barakah, such as fraud and scamming. Unfortunately, Abu Abdul had a habit of not treating his customers fairly, and at times not doing any of the work they had paid for. Some great powers bring no happiness, no joy, but bring pain, sorrow, and suffering. Perhaps this is due to how the powers are sought and obtained, or perhaps it's due to the wrong one decided to do upon getting such powers from the jinn, genie, spirit. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best.